Hello and welcome back to Atlant Insights, where we talk about the Swedish Atlantis theory from the late 1700s by a man called Olof Rudbeck, who you see in the picture here, who wrote this work called Atlantica, or Atlant or Mannheim, more aptly called, and even more aptly, even longer. This is a very long title, as they were in the old days. And his theory is in one sentence that Scandinavia is what Plato meant by Atlantis. In the last presentation, we talked about the groundwork of Gothicism, that the Goths and the Scythians are one and the same, and that they come from Scandinavia. And he builds his theory pretty much on this Gothicism. So now we will begin talking about the Atlantic theory, and Ogygia and some other places which he believes are one and the same. And we begin talking about why Atlantis is not parable. And this will be kind of a shorter video because the last presentation I did was pretty much a collection of everything I've made up until that point. Not everything, but a lot. And it is hundreds of hours basically. So now I'm just gathering a few pieces here and there, and we'll over the time collect them into one big presentation. So now we will talk about this point, how Rudbeck argues that Atlantis is not parable. And first we will go over why people even think that it is a metaphor in the first place, which most scholars believe today, right? Most scholars believe that this is not real, that he meant this to be just a lesson. And one of the biggest arguments for that is, of course, that it's never been officially located, and we seemingly can't agree upon where it should be. There are myriads of theories where Atlantis is, right? There's almost a better question, where has it not been theorized? So this of course begs the question, is this just meant to be a metaphor, since it seemingly doesn't fit perfectly any place in the world? And there are lessons in Plato's works, so you can interpret it that way. There's one scholar called John Dillon, who wrote Tampering with Timaeus, where he basically talks about how scholars change the text to fit narratives or beliefs and things of that sort, right? So this scholar believes that the whole of Timaeus is supposed to be just a lesson, even the parts that seemingly seem to describe a real place. He describes them as verisimilitudes, meaning detailed fantasy, right? So all counter-arguments that these are supposed to be real places are pretty much reabsorbed into his original premise or belief that this is all parable. And my contention with this is that it is an unfalsifiable notion, right? Because then every counter-argument becomes an argument for his case. So there's no counter-argument to even be made with this logic. I'm not saying that this is literally what he's arguing or believes. This is my interpretation of one point that he made in this text, right? I'm not arguing against anything he says in the text, basically, because I can't in this short amount of time, and that's not the focus of this video. This is just to show how much scholars believe that this has to be parable, right? His logic would make him throw away Rudbeck's case as well, because he argues that these realistic descriptions are evidence of Plato's intent, right? This is supposed to refer to a real place, that otherwise he would have described it more perfectly, basically. So this is from his work, Atlant or Mannheim. The first argument he made is, if it is parable, why does Plato have Critias introduce it as with a strong truth claim? So he says that, listen, Socrates, to a tale which, though passing strange, is yet wholly true, as Solon, the wisest of the seven, once upon a time declared. So Solon believed this wholeheartedly to be true. If it is parable, why does Plato explicitly state in the law that an ideal country ought to have 12 portions, while Atlantis has 10? So it says that starting from this, we must divide up both the city itself and all the country into 12 portions. And it basically describes how a perfect society ought to be run, ideally. So here he has 12, while Atlantis has 10. So this is evidence of what we said just before, right? That the descriptions are not perfect, therefore maybe indicating the intention to describe a real place. In this hypothetical ideal society, the capital is in the middle, while the Atlantic is towards the south and on the east coast. So towards the south, this is interpreted in several ways, depending on which scholar you ask. And on the east coast, I believe, is kind of unique to Rudbeck, but we will investigate why Rudbeck claims this, that it's on the east coast, how it can be justified. If it is parable, what point is there to the bay being called Pontus? So there's a bay in Atlantis on the east side. This will also be shown later. And what is the point of having waters at certain depths, right? If this is parable, what is it trying to say with the depths? This is difficult to argue if you believe this is parable. And what is the point of having a 1 stadia wide racetrack? This is, of course, also, what is the symbolism of this, right? It's so mundane. And if it is parable, what is the point of having 2 mid-sized rivers going into the city when there could be the immense size of Volga or the Nile, and more numerous also, if this were some kind of ideal state that then fell for some reason, right? This is also kind of mundane, right? If it is parable, what is the point of having specifically 3 harbors and not many more? If this is a hypothetical ideal state that then fell. Why just 3? Why not many, many more? What is the point of having specifically 1,200 warships? Maybe you could argue that it's some kind of numeral magic or whatever, but it's oddly specific. For a decaying society, why in its prime does it have the color blue and not gold, red, or purple, more traditionally symbolizing riches and splendor? Again, kind of mundane, right? And if this is supposed to be symbolism, it doesn't even make sense to have this as symbolism. And if this is parable, countries seeking glory apparently ought to war against Greece. So this is a short one, as I said. This is all I have for now. I'm working on several things at once and planning and so forth. The next one will be about why Atlantis just logically and historically cannot be either America or Africa. So look out for that one in a few days. And I will see you soon, guys.